Hello and welcome to the Underhive. We are back with some more How to Command the Death Guard. In this series, we're going to take a look at every aspect of the Death Guard. So whether you're looking to get more out of your army or you're thinking of joining Nurgle's dirty protest, then there's something here for you. In this episode, we're going to take a look at the deadly pathogens, which have been newly discounted as of Warzone Nephilim. So they've all gone down by 5 points, which is as little as 25% off or as much as 50% off for some of them. So an absolute bargain for one of the most frequently taken deadly pathogens, which we'll come back to. As another side note, I have now got my copy of Warzone Nephilim. I don't know if the green screen will block that out given the colour, but we have got that. So when it comes to talking about the troops in the next few videos, or well, all the units in the next few videos, we will be able to talk about them in context of the secondaries. As far as deadly pathogens though, deadly pathogens can be provided to any Death Guard character model or Bubonic Astartes model with champion in their profile that is equipped with a plague weapon of any kind that is not a grenade or a relic. So that does include the vast majority of the Fetid Virion, the characters, and the champions. In fact, it includes all the champions and all the Fetid Virion, except for the Taliman, I believe, because he doesn't have a melee weapon at all. So other than the Taliman, you can pop these on your Fetid Virion. As far as HQs, you can't give one to the Demon Prince as far as a melee weapon because they're not plague weapons, which has never made any sense to me. And you couldn't give one to Typhus because his weapon is a relic, technically. And same goes with Mortarion. He's technically got relics, even though they're not relics from the Codex. So let's take a look here. So as we've said, you can equip them on most of those other characters. The key winners for me would be the Lord of Contagion if you've got one, because +1 strength brings his break points to 8 on the heavy profile, 6 on the the scythe profile. Same goes for the Death Shroud Terminators. They hit a nice break point as a result. The Plague Surgeon would go to 6 strength on his Bale Sword, so that's a nice break point. But other than that, the only other one is on the Foul Blight Spawn, which I'm sure you'll be taking since the points reductions. But let's jump into the individual effects. Bearing in mind, you will get +1 strength to the weapon that you're applying this to as a result at a bare minimum. So Acidic Malady now down to 15 points, improves the armor penetration of the weapon by 1. Not that strong an effect considering you could just take Ferric Blight and have basically all your weapons affecting those units have this. So I think I'd rather spend the CP on that personally. Additional AP. There are probably a couple of weapons where it might be particularly relevant, but I'm not going through every single one. I don't necessarily think it's that worth it. But if you want some extra AP and the extra strength, then you can take it. The next is Explosive Outbreak, again down to 15 points. Each time an attack is made with this weapon, unmodified hit rolls of a 6, score 1 additional hit. This is non-cumulative with the Tollkeeper ability. So the Tollkeeper is a relic for the Taliman, which will give 6s explode like this, but only for ranged attacks. So essentially you can't double down by putting this on, say, like a Blight Launcher or a Plague Spewer or something like that, and trying to get 6s double explode. That is not a thing for Death Guard. You'll have to go over to Space Wolves or somebody like that for that. So point being, this really, the idea is you're getting it out of the melee weapon, and that they are self-sufficient. They don't need to be stood next to somebody, they just get 6s explode. Now, of the units that can take this, the most attacks you'll get is 6 from either the Lord of Contagion or the Death Shroud Terminators. So you're by no means guaranteed to hit a 6, even if you're rolling 6 dice, to be fair, you know, you're by no means guaranteed, but it would be average. So you might expect to get an extra attack out of it per fight phase, but you, again, by no means guaranteed. If you're of more of a gambling mindset, you're kind of into the sort of swing your rules, and when it comes off, you're like, wow, this guy is on a mission today, then fair enough. That sort of effect can be very powerful, but it can also do virtually nothing. There are, bear in mind as well that this would only increase the strength of the sergeant's weapon. You can use spells and things to increase the strength of the whole squad. So again, you don't necessarily need a deadly pathogen to hit those breakpoints, but it helps the sergeant or champion do that. Virulent Fever is next, which was 20 down to 15. Each time an attack's made with his weapon, unmodified, wound rolls of a 6 inflict 1 mortal wound in addition to any normal damage. Against certain targets, additional mortal wounds are very relevant. Against the Starties, for example, an extra few mortal wounds would never be a bad thing. So bearing in mind, you would probably have only rolled a maximum of 5 attacks, and let's say maybe one of them failed to hit. So you're pushing 4 through, and then you're expecting 6s on the wound roll. It's just not that likely to come off. But again, if you're a gambling person and you like it when you get those 6s to have a more powerful outcome, perhaps a former Eldari player, then of course you may like that. But I don't think you're going to generate that many mortal wounds on average per turn. Maybe 1 if you're lucky. Next up, Befouling Runoff. I don't think this one will see any play, even down to 5 points now. Each time an attack's made with a weapon, the target doesn't receive the benefits of cover against that attack. Primarily, you want in this on melee weapons, and they're not going to be getting that sort of cover against a melee weapon in terms of dense or light. Technically, it would remove the benefit of heavy cover as well, the way I read it. It just says the benefits of cover, and heavy cover is part of that. So it does affect melee as well, but they've got to be in a specific area of the board where that's a thing, which isn't always the case. So it's probably more geared towards a ranged weapon, and I just don't think you really need the extra strength on any of them. So it just doesn't feel like good value to me, but you could include it for one of your units to be able to ignore cover. Next up, Unstable Sickness, which is one that I think I might try out a bit more frequently now, down to 10 points. Each time an attack is made by this weapon, if enemy models are if enemy models are destroyed by that attack, roll 1d6 on a 4-up. That model's unit suffers 1 mortal wound to a maximum of 3 per turn. The bearer cannot be selected for Befouled Incubator's stratagem. It's not always that relevant to put 1 mortal wound on a model that has multiple wounds. Sometimes they would heal, sometimes your attack would overkill them then. So you need to be aware that that's not always going to be an outright benefit, but particularly against hordes where that's just outright killing models per mortal wound, then of course that can be a lot more effective. And then Corrosive Filth, another one that I would perhaps consider now down to 15 points, given the rest of the army is cheaper and you'll be able to fit them in more effectively. So Corrosive Filth, 15 points. Each time an attack's made with a weapon against a vehicle unit, add 1 to the damage characteristic of that attack. Again, something like a Death Shroud Champion can teleport in your opponent if they see, oh, right, okay, you've got the Corrosive Filth squad in the teleportarium, they're coming down from turn 2. Until that unit comes down, your opponent has to play cagey with the vehicles, or they give you the opportunity you were looking for to get in within just over 9 inch of that vehicle, potentially make a charge, and then ultimately have a very good chance of taking out that vehicle with 5 of those attacks on the champion being at an additional +1 damage. So that could be very strong. I think I will probably try that out a little bit, most likely on the Death Shroud, and use them as a tank hunter rather than more of a general hammer unit. And then the last one there, which was not necessarily an auto-include, but if you had the Foul Blight Spawn, it was virtually an auto-include. Viscous Death, now down to 5 points. Each time you roll to determine the number of attacks with this weapon, you can re-roll the result. So there are very few weapons that a character or champion would have that affects. It's pretty much just the Plague Sprayer with the Foul Blight Spawn. If you imagine that you're only ever happy with a 4-up on the amount of hits, effectively you're going to fail that half the time, and you'd otherwise want to spend a command point to make that better. Having Viscous Death for just 5 points saves you potentially multiple command points throughout the game, and also just makes them the unit itself more consistent on average. Obviously, you could roll a 2 into a 1, it happens, but most of the time you're gonna have a chance at a result a bit better than you did previously if you were unhappy with the result. Combined with taking the Revolting Stench Vats relic means that you wouldn't have been able to take Vomitrix anyway, but Viscous Death cannot go on a relic either. So you're getting the best of both worlds with the Foul Blight Spawn by taking Revolting Stench Vat and Viscous Death, because you still get to the strength 8 on the weapon profile, and yes, you don't get the guaranteed 7 from Vomitrix, but you should be more frequently hitting the top end of the maximum 6 possible attacks by being able to re-roll. So that's it for the deadly pathogens. I think they have been made more relevant. It was a shame previously that they basically didn't see any play outside Viscous Death, and even that was really just because 10 points is probably better than spending command points on rerolls. Because of course you've still got the command point, and you can still do a reroll later if you need to. So ultimately, Viscous Death going down means it becomes an auto-include if you've got a Blight Spawn. The others, I think they'll probably see more experimentation, but I still don't think they're overly strong. I don't think they need to be reduced in points any further, otherwise it starts to become like, oh, here's like 7 free buffs you can have, which is unnecessary, really. I think there should be a cost, but I think they've got it right by reducing it, and I think we'll see a few more, even though we're not going to see every character in Champion equipped with one by any means. Well, that's it for the Deadly Pathogens. Thank you so much for watching. If you're enjoying the series, I'd really appreciate if you get involved, whether it's a like, a comment, a sub. You know that helps, but ultimately, I really appreciate it, so thank you very much for that. But otherwise, thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next time in the Underhive.